The following is a conversation with Mr. Alec Padron. He's a musician, he's a Texan, he's a good friend, and he's a hell of a mechanic and fabricator at Revival Cycles. The conversation that follows is just one of many that Alec and I have had, sitting down over a cocktail to really just shoot the shit and catch up. He lives in England, yet he still manages the workshop for Revival here in Austin. He's in a kick-ass band that tours the world. He loves to wrench. He loves to meet great people. He's about to be a dad, and I recorded this a year ago, so listen up. The result of the conversation Ricky and I had, and that, the podcast from the beginning was supposed to be called the Handbuilt Podcast, and it wasn't just a branding play. It wasn't me calling the podcast Handbuilt Podcast because we had the Handbuilt show. It was the Handbuilt Podcast because in my mind from the beginning, the joy of all of this, and the reason I don't have an office job with my fucking business degree, is that I enjoy working with my hands too much. It's too much fun. We all know I don't get to do. I personally don't get to do enough of it, but I support a lot of other people doing it. Sorry, a little hiccup there from the booze and the pizza. So, my question to you, Alec, is that when did you discover that you were good with, or that you were fulfilled by working with your hands? And it could go, we could make lots of jokes about that, but
actually for me it started a little later in life. I wasn't one of those kids that was like, oh, I've been riding dirt bikes since I was fucking 5 and all that.
We
shit.
talk about that.
Yeah, like I never had, I didn't even, motorcycles were not, motorcycles not on my radar until much later. I was obsessed with cars when I was a kid. Like,
same.
Obsessed with them. I had them on my wall, like Matchbox cars, like everything. Like I just had cars. I was just obsessed with them. So when I got to the age of being able to like drive and stuff, like, had a car, tinkered with it, didn't really obviously know what I was doing, but I would always try to like mess with it somehow. You know what I mean? And it was about that time where I was like, I like old things. I like old cars, and I like style wise and all that stuff, mainly. And then they were, in my mind back then when I was a kid, they were like a lot more simple, so I could kind of wrap my head around it a little bit better.
How old were we talking?
We're like 15 or something.
Okay.
And then and I had all these old cars, and of course like Volkswagens, like everybody does. And my first car actually was a 48 Dodge DeSoto.
I think you've told me
it was passed down from my cousin Aaron. And so I had old cars since I could drive, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of like helped fuel the obsession with cars. But as far as motorcycles go, it actually wasn't until it all kind of spawned out of necessity. I was probably in my, mid 20s. And I didn't have a car at the time, and I was going to school, and I needed transportation. So that's when I bought this, like the Yamaha, that RD250 that I had, my first motorcycle. And again, I thought it looked cool, but I wasn't like obsessed with bikes. I was just like, oh, this is cool. I need transportation. I like the color of this thing. I don't know anything about motorcycles. I'm going to buy it, right? And it wasn't until I actually started riding it, like, immediately, as soon as I rode the motorcycle for the first time, I taught myself how to ride. I had no fucking clue. I was just like,
oh my God, that scares the hell out of me.
Well, my friend Jose had a bike. And back then, okay, so I'm 46 now. I was like 25 or something at the time. So, like 20 years ago in Austin, like, I didn't know anybody that had a motorcycle. You know what I mean? Now you can't, everyone's got a fucking motorcycle, but my friend Jose had one, and I actually knew Steve Koenig back in the day. Didn't know him very well, but I knew that he had a motorcycle too because I'd see him around town.
He's Yamaha. He's already, yeah.
And so my friend Jose had a bike, and we were just like, oh shit, like we have bikes. You know what I mean? So that he kind of did the same thing, got it out of necessity, and then we just became obsessed with them because it was a motorcycle and they were fucking cool, and nobody had a motorcycle in town, and we were the dudes with motorcycles. That I knew, right? I'm sure, you guys existed, but I didn't know you back then. But yeah, so I just became obsessed with it. And then being broke, I couldn't take it anywhere. So I would have to work on it myself. And that's kind of how it started for me. And then, I've always been kind of a hands-on person because I've been a musician my entire life. So using your hands, working with my hands has always been like exciting to me in any capacity. And so whenever I, had the opportunity or had to, out of necessity, work on bikes myself and cars, and I had already kind of been toying with that, I loved it. Just the feeling of like fixing something or modifying something or whatever it was, it was, I was always, it all kind of, because I've always liked things that don't exist, right? Whether it's like a certain car or a motorcycle or a guitar or a pair of shoes or whatever it is, I'm always like, oh, I like this, but if only it were this way, you know what I mean? So these things, like, they never, so that's what drew me into, modifications of motorcycles and cars and stuff. And just on a very basic level, at first, because I didn't know what I was doing. Oh, I'll just take the fender off because that looks cool or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how it started for me. And then it just became my entire life.
So I think that takes it one direction. It's like talking about how like where your fascination came with, which it sounds like it was even more practical than that. It was just a natural extension that you know how to work on it. But this is going to tell you more about what goes on in my head. But it's like, have you ever considered? Let me just say this: in high school, I didn't really want people to know that I knew how to work on things. And even post high school, I didn't want people to know that I knew how to fix things.
No, actually, it's funny because I was the exact opposite when I was younger, and I knew how to fix things. I wanted people to know because, it made me feel good. You know what I mean? It made me feel like I was like
capable.
You know what I mean? Now, of course, the older I get, I'm like, I don't tell people.
Yeah, no. I'm talking about when you're younger, and what I mean is, I think it's odd to say this, but it's completely true. Even as I'm thinking this, it's like, oh, is that really real? But yeah, it is. That in high school, post high school, I went to a school where most of the kids had more money than me, or had more education, or their families had whatever. They were more affluent than we were, and it almost seemed shameful to me that I was the guy who had grease under his fingernails and worked on his own stuff, and couldn't just afford to go buy the brand new dirt bike. I had to like get the dirt bike that was broken and fix it. Like, I felt some shame for my lack of affluence and didn't tell anybody. And it wasn't until I was in my mid 20s or early 20s that I was dating a girl who was like, literally used the word capable. She goes, do you know how awesome it is that you're capable? And I was like, what are you talking about? Everybody's capable. And like, it didn't even make sense. It was this concept that didn't even register for me that would be something that people would think was unique, because I thought everyone was capable. They just weren't distracted by this stupid and tangible thing of motorcycles or cars, and who gives a damn about fixing the alternator on a car? Like, what value is that to your life? You need to be a stockbroker and to buy a Lamborghini and whatever the hell it is. Like, that was the mind fuck that I think hit me. Yeah. And it wasn't until I was in that mid-20s period that I started to be a little bit proud of it. And then it certainly wasn't until Revival kind of started to take off and we got some level of recognition before I was like, yeah. And it was reading the book Shop Class's Soulcraft by Matt Crawford that really made me go, yeah, they're right. He's right. There's like that. The whole premise of that book is that there is an undeniable respect that should be given to people that work with their hands and their capabilities to fix and repair or whatever the hell it is and build. And society had for decades treated them as though that was a low level bullshit thing. So you never experienced that, and frankly, what I'm saying is I'm jealous.
Yeah, I never did. And for me also, I wanted, I had the skill that people would have to pay to use, right? But me and my friends, like, they were all just as broke as I was, so I was like, no, let me fix your shit, because then you don't have to pay anybody to do it. You know what I mean?
You had value.
Everybody wins. You know
group.
What I mean? Like, I get to do this. It's fun. I get to fix your shit. That way you don't have to spend hundreds of dollars of wherever. And we're all just good. You know what I mean? It was kind of more of like a communal thing for me. It was like, all our friends brought something to the table for all the other friends. And that was mine. I was like, yeah, I'll fix your car, dude. Yeah,
I'm the guy that can do that.
Yeah,
the guy that can do something else.
Exactly.
So. That reminds me about earlier when you were talking about just sitting around with a friend laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
can we just sit around and laugh?
Yeah.
I miss laughing.
Yeah, just sitting around, like, basically doing nothing.
Doing nothing, man.
Fucking off.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Now it's like, oh yeah, I can do this, but fuck, I can do it Tuesday between 6 and 6:30. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Our overcommitted
yeah.
lives.
Yeah, I've got to
So
retime my backsplash.
what I mean, you grew up in a different situation too. What what was your experience?
I grew up around bikes and engines and going to like riding
With your old
bike.
man or what?
No, with my mom's youngest brother was young enough to be my older brother.
Okay.
And he was real influential in my life when I was young. Like he bought me my first dirt bike, and he before I was big enough to ride it myself, he would sit on the back and he'd put me on front, and we'd ride 20 miles across town and ride the dirt trails and stuff together all day long and come back, and he would take me to Ennis to the drag races. And
Yeah.
I remember staying up way later than a 6 or 7 year old to hanging out with him and his friends while they worked on a 69 Camaro, and then a 67 Camaro.
Yeah, get it
the
right.
Fender wells.
Get it
You
right.
don't fuck around. Yeah, like he would have been like, fuck that.
Very big difference.
Yeah.
between those two cars. The headlights.
Yeah, the fender. Yeah, the fenders are flat across the top of a 69. It's a piece of shit. And he had, and then after that he had a 55 Bel Air with a 454, and like staying up late rebuilding a
So
transmission.
you idolized this specific person to a
What's
degree?
weird is like I won't say I idolized him, but he was there. Like we were like
He influenced you.
he would take me out, and I'd spend the night till 2 a.m. rebuilding a transmission, and but I didn't love it. Like I would go do it,
Yeah, I don't
but
see
I
you
was
loving
never
it.
felt the inclination to do it on my own. Like I loved riding dirt bikes until I fucked myself up terribly one day, and then I was like, I caught the fear, and I'd still ride occasionally, but like
That hurts too much.
I was I was like everything when I was young. Like I would do anything until I severely injured myself, and then I would start to weigh the consequences, and I couldn't bring myself to do it anymore because I'd be like, no, I don't no, it's not worth that.
That's not my thing.
Yeah, I was never one of those. I never enjoyed getting hurt.
So wait, you didn't enjoy doing the transmission. So what do you mean? Like,
Well,
what part of it did you like?
Hanging out.
Working with my hands. I liked, but it didn't. But I liked working with my hands, but I didn't care about cars. I didn't care about like.
You just knew you liked working with.
I
your
like
hands.
with my hands. Yeah, like I would take every Star Wars spaceship toy or whatever I had, and I dismantle it into all its separate pieces, and I was constantly pulling things apart.
Oh man, you just fucking knocked loose a
Yeah.
memory of mine.
I
too.
didn't have any of that stuff.
Dude,
Yeah.
because
you had the Star Wars.
I killed it. Oh, dude, I had the giant,
I never knew that.
whatever the giant walker things were, and
You also got candy. I didn't get that.
Oh God,
I didn't get anything like that.
You're
yeah, I
lucky.
used to build model cars like
Oh yeah, yeah.
like by the.
I did
fucking
that. There's some of them sitting
truckload,
over there.
man.
There's one on
Yeah.
top of that
My
thing. You
parents
see it?
knew that that's what I wanted, or relatives, and I would always build those with the glue and all that shit,
Yeah.
that crazy glue. Not crazy glue, but that crazy ass glue.
Stuff you
that
can smell. It smelled real
I
good.
think I'm still having problems because of that. But yeah, that's that you just reminded me. That's actually what started it.
Yeah,
I was like, oh,
I've got a box full of all of them still.
I still go on eBay and look for like cool ass fucking like model,
Here, bring
kits
that
and
over here,
stuff.
Ricky, just because I think it's funny.
Then I'm like, I don't want to spend
Yeah.
$100 on this,
Yeah.
But,
I got real into model rockets, or if that's their, I don't know if they
I didn't
call
get
them
into
model
that.
rocket.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was real into it, but then and eventually like I stopped buying my own. I started building them from scratch. And
So this is the one that it's not together, obviously. And I don't
Yeah,
know
the
what
Challenger?
happened to all of it. No, it's a '66 Chevelle SS.
oh, it's a Chevelle. Can't tell.
Same
'cause it
car that
doesn't have
Donnie just
anything.
bought.
Hmm.
All right, that
Hmm.
car, but it was like whatever, the dye was red, and then I painted it this like metallic blue and
I used
black.
to build them and then crash them into each other like
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh, Lord.
I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
This is the one that I have a slice right through my fingernail to the bone.
razor
Cutting
blade.
the inside of the tire out with an X-Acto blade.
I got some of
You know what I'm
those.
talking about?
Yeah, I have some of those.
Damn, I don't know where it went. But regardless, like I was
Mhm.
really proud of that. I wet sanded that and like. Did you just throw it?
It's not finished. You still have time.
I'll get to it one day.
Yeah.
I think I was like 10 or younger, and I found that like you put the little stickers on the side.
Oh man, that was the shit.
But this had the frame with the hood that went forward. It was a race car, Like when I found these the other day or whatever years ago, I remembered how much I loved them, and I was like, I can't wait to work on cars. Yeah, this was the seed. I forgot about it until you mentioned it just now.
Yeah, and I forgot about it until he mentioned it.
Yeah,
that was it.
When you were talking earlier, what I used to say to people, because whenever I told anybody I worked on bikes, which
right here.
I bought my first motorcycle because I was sick of riding bicycles around town.
Yeah.
And there was this mystique anytime I said either that I worked here or that I was into vintage bikes or whatever, and somebody would say, "Oh, you're a bike mechanic," and I would always just say like by necessity.
Yeah.
Because my shit was
mechanic
broken.
by necessity is what I used to tell people. It's not I didn't do it because I wanted to be a bike mechanic. I did it because I wanted to get around town.
Well, I started doing it professionally because, again, I was in my 20s and I was working at the skate park of Austin, RIP, and my friend Smitty, there's a bunch of Smitties, so it's not the same one
Yeah.
Isn't that so funny? That's like always the go-to nickname for a Smith, Anyways, he's older than me, so I'm 46. I think he's like in his early 50s now, maybe 50. Actually, he's probably like 50. But when I was like 25 or 24 and he was like 30, it was like a big deal,
Big old guy.
Yeah. And he was cool. I mean, I love that guy. He's still like a hard homie. But he changed. I mean, I don't think I've ever even told him this, but he actually changed my life because I was working at the skate park and I was doing that because, I've been in a band since I was a kid, consistently. And so whenever, everybody comes off tour, everybody scatters to make money somewhere, whether it's a bar or whatever the fuck. So I was working at the skate park because it was like it was just a lot of freedom, right? But I was tired of I was 27 and I was ready for like to become an adult. You know what I mean? And Chris worked at a land title insurance company. And I didn't even know what the fuck that was, but I knew he had a real job. And one day we were talking at the skate park, and I was telling him like, "Oh man, like I think I want to like try like an office job or something." I didn't know what the hell I was saying.
Lame.
Yeah. Well, I mean, exactly.
That's what Chris wanted, by the way. Keep going. Yeah.
And so he was like, "Well, dude, like we're hiring at my company. It sucks, but like if you want to try it out, like I can,
get you
in,
spot, yeah."
And I was like, "Yeah, well, tell me about it." So he told me what it was, and it was basically just like data entry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, man. Like I want to try it." You know what I mean? Or maybe I was 25. I don't fucking remember.
I love the idea with you with a desk job.
Oh,
Go
dude,
ahead.
it was
Yeah.
okay. So I went there and I interviewed and I got the job, and it was an office job. So there was like 10 of us in there, 12, like in different offices. But it was cool because everybody that was there, I was the youngest one by far. And then everybody was like older and stuff, but they were all like really nice. Like everybody was like super cool. So it wasn't like I was working with like, you hear those horror stories of office, like where somebody's like stealing somebody's lunch and shit.
Mhm.
It wasn't anything like that. We all got along.
I've had that happen.
Yeah, we all got along. And I remember one day I just, it wasn't that I hated the job yet, but I was working and I remember I was talking to this one woman that was working there one day, and she was like, I was like, "Oh, how long you been working here?" She's like, "Oh, I started when I was your age." And when she said that, man, I could not fucking shake that shit. I was like, holy shit.
And you're still doing this.
Like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yep.
Like, I can't be this person. Like, I can't. And, I was still, in a band, of course, and doing stuff. But the touring at that point, we had kind of chilled out for a few years. And I was like, and I told Smitty because we were close. I was like, dude, I'm scared. Like, I don't want to work here anymore. Like, I mean, I had been there for like a year maybe, and I was like, I need to do something. He's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I was like, "I don't fucking know, man. Like, I don't know what I want to do."
I love this that you're just searching, right?
Yeah, I was like, okay, like, what do I want to do? I mean, of course, I'm still in this band, and that's fine, but like, I need something to fall back on. You know what I mean? And so a couple days went by, and he was like, "Hey, you like working on cars and motorcycles and shit? Like," he's like, "Why don't you become a mechanic?" And I was like, I never thought about doing that like as a job. And he was like, yeah, dude. He was like, and he was kind of my boss. And he,
And he's telling you to go do something else.
dude, he was like, man, like look that shit up online. Take some online classes. I don't give a fuck. Like you can do it here as long as you get your other shit done. And I was like, damn, dude. Like, so he's the one that like brought it up. He's the one that encouraged me to do it. And I did it. And then that's why I still do it. You know what I mean?
I remember you telling me a little bit of this. I think it might have been years ago. It might have even been on a podcast. But
yeah, man.
Yeah.
And he was the one that like, that thought didn't even cross my mind because it was all out of necessity. It was like, oh yeah, I fixed this shit. I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are professionals. I mean, everybody starts somewhere, right?
But you didn't have a dad in your life pushing this on you.
No. And my dad wasn't mechanically inclined. He
Right.
was a carpenter and built all kinds of amazing
Did he
stuff.
work with his hands?
Yeah, absolutely. But he wasn't like, he wasn't a car. I mean, he liked cars, but he wasn't like a car guy. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So then once he said that, it just kind of was like, oh, I can do this stuff. Like maybe I can do this. You know what I mean? And he was like really encouraging, to the point where he didn't even care if I like studied up on it, like at work.
See, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, and then that was it, and that's what I ended up doing, and
Yeah.
that's what I still do. And it's funny because even when the band started making money and becoming like more successful, and then other people like would come back from tour and they wouldn't have to work.
You go back to work.
I would still go back because I'm like, man, I like this shit. You know what I mean? But I always made it to where like, okay, I work here. It's like what I told you, you know. But I play in this band. Like, is that
Can we make that
okay?
work?
You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
I have a mistress.
Yeah, and of course, you know, and that's one of the things that I tell Alan all the time. I mean, you know, I've been very lucky with here too because then I can just still do
Pursue
that.
both.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that I'd like you much if you didn't have a band. Because you'd be a grumpy old fucker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how much I love it that I still do it. You know what I
hearing
mean?
you talk about it, and see, this is why we need to do more podcasts. Hearing you talk about it reminds me of like, oh yeah, there were moments, there were influences where I saw things and experienced things that pushed me that direction. My dad restored, you know, not this car, but like a '68 big block El Camino that someone had given him that was so rusty that you could punch a hole through the side of it. It was not, but it was a really rare, well optioned big block car. Blah 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 blah. And he took it on, and I don't think he'd ever restored a car before. He grew up with dirt poor. And he was in the oil industry, and he was so devoted to finishing this car. He had borrowed some shop space from a buddy that owned like a dump truck company or something. The guy's name was Billy Lamb. Why do I remember that? I don't know. And it was this dark corner of the shop with terrible lighting and obviously no air conditioning, just a fan. And he would go there every day after work and work on it. And this is when it was just me living with my dad. And he would take me with him. And I was probably 11 or something. Yeah, granted, I'd already had motorcycles. I already did top end rebuilds. My dad gave me a Briggs & Stratton lawnmower motor that was blown up, me and my brother, and put it on the floor and said, here, tear this apart and make it run and figure out what's wrong with it. And then he guided us through it, but he didn't touch a wrench. He made us do it. So I started to understand how internal combustion works. But the desire, who gives a fuck if you know how it works? The desire came, I think, from watching my dad put himself into working double time, put himself into this thing to see the end result. And then when the end result was a show car, and he was really proud of it, and we could go to the back of the neighborhood and do giant long burnouts, which are really, really, really fun when you're 12 years old. That I was addicted to that project part of it, but even until I was in my 20s, I didn't realize that I had a desire. I've always taken on more projects, as you know, than I should, but I didn't realize the endorphins that kicked in, right?
Oh, yeah, man.
Watching that and being close to it, when you talked about your uncle a while ago. I think
that's the reason why me and especially and other people that are in the same boat, you guys or whatever included, like I'll get these projects, I'll build them up, I'll do all the stuff to them, and then when I'm done, I'll just sell
You're
them.
bored, yeah.
I'm like, okay, I already did this.
I hated you for selling your Ford truck.
Yeah.
I loved it so much.
I did too, man. That's the one regret. That's the one car regret that I ever.
That's how we got to know each other better.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the next question on here is,
I've still been looking for one ever since.
oh really?
Mhm.
Well, the van version, whatever that was, the
I had the
Econoline van.
Econoline.
The guy I mentioned earlier had one of those too.
Yeah.
Had one of those.
I thought the Econoline was one of those because it was the '60s one, right? So it was
Yeah.
that crazy
with
looking
the big round
Yeah.
things in the front.
And
right?
so that was one of those purchases that I had always wanted one until I finally bought one and drove it, and I was like, I fucking hate this
Terrible,
thing. You know
yeah.
what I mean? But the F100,
I
that
forgot about
58,
that one.
yeah, that was the one that And yeah, that thing was, they're still awesome. I'm
So classic.
part of like these fridge groups of
Oh,
those
are
things.
you?
Yeah, just because I'm always like, somebody selling one, because the one that I want, because they, you know, I want a very specific year and and then that specific year they had they only made the big back window for a few of them.
Yeah.
So they're even hard. I mean, you can find 58, 59, 60s
Right.
like all day long, but the 57 with the big window in the back, that's like,
I'd like to have
that's
a
the one.
59 or 60 El Camino
Oh yeah,
with
dude,
the
I
big
love those
flat
too.
fenders. I
Mhm.
think those are so pretty. Anyway,
It's weird. I like cars. I'm not like a car. Like I don't have like a favorite. I just like different decades, and so and that can change the make of it, right?
yeah.
Like 50s Fords, right? You know, some 60s Chevys. You know what I mean?
When you get into design though too, you realize, I mean, dude, well, I mean, if you're knowledgeable enough, you know, but if you think about, oh shit, speaking of who's calling me, it's Frank Saucedo, very famous car designer.
Oh, shit.
Very, very famous.
He
car
heard us
designer.
talking about cars.
He's called me a couple of times now. I'm just gonna ask if I can
Screen
call
that.
back.
Just scream
Um,
that shit. Fucking
what-
hang
what's
up on
that?
it. Just hang up on it.
Just
Fuck
like
him.
boom. He's
Yeah.
called me a couple of times. I haven't called him back.
Fuck that guy.
He works for Myers Manx now.
Ah, okay.
Oh.
Yeah. He's the head of Myers Manx.
Wow.
Anyway, is that if you think about car design, especially in America, 5960, craziest shit they ever really did on like the space age stuff. And
Oh, yeah.
details on- and then 62, everything became watered down. I mean, maybe a Corvette split window, but like, what can you think of? I always think GM for some reason, like post 62, that was crazy. There wasn't anything. Everything just became bland. I don't even know.
Yeah, things got more square and all these things.
Just kind of, I mean, even the shape of this is just really boring.
That's why and with
know, like-
motorcycles too. I mean, man, anything past like 69.
you said that earlier when we were looking for
I'm
that.
like, dude,
shit.
I don't give a damn. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it just
Mm.
things started turning into bulky, big lights, plastic. You know, shitty disc brakes. You know what I
Radiators,
mean? Like,
liquid cooled.
yeah, it's just like, man, the 60s. You know, for motorcycles, I think was like,
And see, my tastes go to the
Mm.
40s.
no, I agree, but I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
saying.
Well, I know what it is for motorcycles is that the 1970s is when mass production started on
Mhm.
bikes, and that's when they started counting how many copper coils they wrapped around on the charging system
Yeah.
so they could save pennies per
Mm.
charging
Yeah.
system. And like,
You personally know about that shit.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's how, so like,
Yeah, and then
that's how-
regulations and all these things. So
yeah,
you know,
well,
what
that's
I mean?
how companies like Sirianni went out of business because everything went from being, they were like coach builders through the 40s, 50s, 60s, and then 70s, once the Japanese big three really started to take over. Everybody had to try and keep up, and all those coach building production houses that were family owned, they were building the parts for all the Italian and European builders, couldn't keep up with what Japan was doing, and folded.
damn.
Yeah, and then that as a skill set almost
Yeah.
completely went extinct.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, let me just say
All right, go
real
ahead.
quick, all that shit went boxy and square because that was like fresh futuristic in 1963.
yeah.
Like,
But
now
I
it's-
don't know why I'm specifically thinking about a 74 Chevelle. I'm sorry, 74 Impala compared to a 59. I'm sorry, 64 Impala compared to a 59 El Camino. Like, you talk about from audacious and crazy to just bland.
Yeah, and it was crazy because there were like certain years that,
Shouldn't say 6'4", I should say 6'5", but
like with these cars, there were like definitive years where it was like suddenly it was just a completely different fucking car, like
Mhm.
you know, or truck, you know, and you're talking about like a 1948 Ford, right?
Mhm.
And then 49, boom,
yeah,
it's like what the fuck is
It
this
took a
thing?
turn.
Yeah,
took a turn.
and
yeah.
that happened a lot, and it was awesome because both of those cars are amazing. But yeah, I mean, they don't. There's no.
Dude, when the Ford Taurus came out. No, I mean,
No, I
when the
know.
Ford Taurus came out, you were like,
Mm.
"Ooh, future, man!"
do
It
they
was
still
like,
do shit like that? Because for me, all cars just kind of look the same. now.
well, I mean, it almost goes back to
I mean,
retro. The new
they
whatever
still,
that Hyundai electric thing is, it's all
Yeah.
square and shit.
they
Or
still come out of nowhere with like retrofit
Occasionally.
designs, but they're just not good.
The Tesla truck thing, Cyber
Mm.
truck thing.
Uh,
Like,
I
that's
mean,
the biggest leap
Yeah,
I've seen in
I
a while.
will say that the difference between that is there was no Tesla truck before the Tesla truck.
Yeah. So
Whereas
it's
like what Alec's
suddenly-
talking about is like
Oh, for
how
the
they-
models. Yeah,
yeah, the
that's true.
paradigm shift
Yeah.
in the aesthetic, you know, which is where they hire like a new designer or something, or the brand like sales slow, and so they hire a new
Reimagine
creative
the whole
team
thing.
to redo the whole
Yeah.
thing to freshen it up. And
Yeah.
they usually do something terrible. How many times does the Mustang get reinvented, and how many times was it great, and how many times
Oh, I've never thought the
not-
Mustang was cool. Was good.
you know?
Never been a fan.
My first car technically was a '66 Mustang.
Mm.
I just never drove it because I never finished it.
Mm.
it was pretty much given to me.
Oh yeah, technically
yeah.
mine was actually an '84 Mustang with T-tops.
Oh God, that's
Yeah,
not a
so
good
it's-
year,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's like the Mustang.
Oh,
2
it was
style year.
terrible. Yeah, yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was driving with Ricky the other day and I saw a Mustang 2. I was like, oh my God, like it's a Mustang 2. And he goes, was that, well, that's kind of cool. I was like, no, that is not fucking cool. That is the biggest turd they ever made.
Mm.
It's a glorified Ford Pinto, and a Ford Pinto was not a good
well, all
car.
those like the Bronco too. Also,
Oh,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what the fuck is this?
People like those. I saw one driving the other day. Actually, you know what I saw? What I realized is vintage now. I was crossing airport, and there was a 1990s Blazer ZR2.
Those are tight.
And I thought, that's vintage. That's a 30-year-old truck.
Well, it depends. The early '90s.
It was in high school.
What the ones that look like like the square lunch boxes. Those are the things that I like.
No, 1997
Oh, the late '90s.
Blazer ZR2
the
when it was
round
small.
and yeah.
That's a
Mhm.
vintage truck. It
Yeah,
was
isn't
all
that crazy?
decked out. I was like, that's a 30-year-old vintage truck.
What year is your Forerunner?
It's a
I
2002.
got to pee, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
It's crazy.
2002?
Yeah.
I'm reading Ricky's notes. This
Mhm.
feels a little on the nose.
It's like get back on track. He edited that while you were gone.
No.
Say.
What's your favorite revival bike?
Hmm. I really,
Because we've done a lot now.
I know. I really like the that R1100 we did.
Yeah, it disappeared.
Yeah, I really like that one.
That
That was
just
like
Like
one of
disappeared.
Monaco or something.
the, yeah.
Huh?
It went to Monaco.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what happened to it
Mhm.
ultimately?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
We
then
should track that down.
yeah, I really liked that one. I really liked the. I always like the ones that are a little more practical.
Oh, is
Uh,
that how you tell me you didn't like the birdcage?
No, I think I've told you this before. I didn't like the birdcage at all until it came back into our possession.
Really?
So
I don't remember
it's
that.
not that I didn't like it, but man, that build was. I swear that.
Oh, that's
build
right, you did
took
tell me
like
this.
a year off my life.
You were scarred.
yeah, and I,
we did it in 7 weeks.
I mean, and we were doing it in time. I couldn't really appreciate it because it was just so stressful. And then I mean, I knew we were making something cool, but I didn't really appreciate it. And then because we were trying to finish it, and then it fucking left, and then I was like, God damn! Like I'm glad that's gone,
Yeah.
And I don't even want to fucking think about it. And you were even like, ride it, and I'm like, I'm not riding that goddamn thing, like I don't even want to ride it, And then
I'm looking at the A-arm behind you, by the way. Just
Oh, yeah. And then maybe like the next year it came back, and I remember it had gotten to the shop. I came to the shop one morning, I got my coffee, and I was like, oh, there's the birdcage, and I was looking at it and I was like, damn, this thing's cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I had to I had to have some it's like a breakup, I had to have some time away, and then you know what, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, she was okay.
Yeah, she
was
was
all
good
right.
looking.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of want to have sex again, but yeah. So yeah, I
but
do,
I don't need to date her forever. Yeah,
I do
yeah.
like the birdcage, but it's funny because that's the bike. Like when people, my wife is like the biggest, cheerleader of mine. I mean, I don't ever tell people like, what I do as
You
far
don't
as like,
start that way. It's
yeah, or
I
like
say I'm a
music
mechanic.
or whatever. And she's
Yeah.
always just like, she and whenever we talk about building custom bikes, the birdcage is what she always shows people. She leads with that because it's so out there. You know what I mean? Like, what kind of bikes do you guys build? And
Then you can go backwards from there.
yeah,
You can be
and
like,
then
well,
you
here's
show
where we
them that,
jump
and
the
they're
shark.
What the fuck is this? Like that's amazing. And then they have all these questions, and then you take them back to like but here's a restoration of a duck or
Yeah.
whatever it is. So that is one of my favorites. But I think the R1100.
See,
There's another one that I really liked.
yeah, I the one I always show people now that you said that is the 6.
Yeah, that one's. I didn't work on that one though. I did not touch that one.
Just Auerbach.
Yeah, it was Arbach and
Stefan.
Doc and
You
Stefan.
didn't touch it at all. I can't believe we were that.
I was building it. I was doing another one.
Okay.
I think me and Andy and I were doing like another one. And so I wanted to work on it, but it just didn't really work out. You know what
There's
I mean?
a lot of people here.
Yeah, there was a lot of people here at the time, you know?
And that bike was just another one I just pulled out of my ass.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was like, hey, what do you want? All right, let's do this.
Yeah, it was cool.
And then just went a crazy ass direction.
Man, it was awesome.
Riding it was the part that was the most.
I didn't want to ride that one either.
It ran great.
No, I know, but I was
smooth
like,
and easy to ride. It was
I
like
don't wanna
riding a
be the one to
scooter.
crash this thing.
Nothing to it. I wish we had that one back. We'll probably never see it back. But I'd
Yeah,
love
we'll
to.
probably. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever see that one again.
The Haas was not a rideable one.
No,
That I'm sorry, the Henne. The Henne.
the BMW. Yeah.
BMW was not rideable.
Yeah. Now I'm drawing a blank on what all we've built, but
Speaking of which, I don't know if I told you guys the shipping container, the machine shop. Kids loving it.
did you ever
the
find out what
bottom.
happened to that dude's back?
He's wanting to go back to work already.
Really?
But it was a
Okay.
shattered vertebrae.
Holy shit.
But or I shouldn't say shattered. It was a chip off the side of it that it didn't screw up his.
Wow.
Man, that guy got so lucky.
Oh
I mean,
my
I wasn't
God.
even here, but
But he's in a cast wanting to go back to work.
dude, that day, because I was in England and
Yeah.
I was talking with Colt about something, and he was like, "Dude, I can't talk. Can I just call you in a
We were
little
all
bit?"
a little bit in shock.
Yeah, and then he called me back, and then he was like, "I got to go help this dude. Like something happened," and then I ended up talking to Jeff on the phone. He was just like, "Dude, some crazy shit just happened." And then he told me that, and then when I finally had the meeting with Colt, he was like, "Dude, some crazy shit just
We
happened."
didn't get shit done that day.
It's
No,
weird
that
man.
Because
was
it was
like-
supposed to be just he's picking
they
it
put
up.
a-
We thought we were going to film it for 30 minutes. It was going to leave and we were going to be done.
for context, I guess.
And it was all day. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We had a shipping container that we had our CNC machine in, and like a
We
lathe and
called
all
it the
that.
machine container.
Yeah, and it was our machine container. And we sold it, and these two guys, I guess, came to pick it up,
Yeah.
and when they were loading it
Who-
incorrectly,
Yes.
Yeah.
one of the straps that had a giant fucking like metal
Huge
buckle on it,
chain.
yeah, and a
Huge
chain snapped, flew back, and cracked this dude right on the back
And in the arm.
and in the arm.
Went through his arm into his back.
Just kind of whipped around, and then he, like, everybody apparently was like freaked out. Like, we're like, dude, this guy's paralyzed for sure.
Ambulance.
You know what I mean?
All of it. He was shaking and
Yeah.
sweating. And
Oof.
it was a dirty scene. He has way more footage of it than we'd ever want. That's for sure.
Oh God, yeah, I don't ever
But-
want to see that.
Yeah. Where did I get off on that? Anyway,
So you don't
the
get
kid who bought it,
That's what happens when you don't get sloppy.
you don't cut corners.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
it comes
yeah,
to
yeah.
rigging, you don't cut corners.
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
go, oh, this will hold.
Yeah.
You make sure it's fucking hooked
Get
in.
out of the
But that
way.
kid's
He
stoked
learned
on
a
it.
lesson. Anyway, the kid who bought it, who wasn't here that day, nothing to do with that, loved it. It
Awesome.
was a guy, it was an uncle who bought it for his nephew. He owns an oil service company that makes tools, and he bought it for his nephew who's just gotten out of engineering school as a mechanical
Oh my
engineer.
God, that's awesome.
And he wanted to, and so he like literally told me before they even took it out there, he had a job for him to complete using the machine container to help pay for the whole
That's
thing.
great.
So he financed it. And if you'd seen the look on this kid's face when he was here, I say kid, he's like 22 probably. He was trying to withhold his enthusiasm because I think they thought they were going to get a deal on it, that I was going to like bargain or whatever, but I wasn't. I was like, no, I'm taking full price. This is a deal.
Oh yeah,
And
it's already a deal.
it's already a deal, and they didn't even argue on it. To their credit, they were like, "Yeah, all right, it's worth it. We'll take it." I was so excited for him. Like, we have newer machines. We don't really need that thing anymore. Like, it was just going to be a hindrance for us. But to see it go to this guy who's going to appreciate it and love it and know what it's worth, even though it's just a bunch of old, outdated equipment, was really cool. And his uncle texted me and said that he's loving it. So
Awesome.
anyway, it's just neat that the stuff goes on
Yeah, man.
and then it stays in its original form. Literally, all the stuff is in the same position it was in when it left here.
I mean, it
It's
was
just
set up
getting
great.
used somewhere else. Yeah, no, it was. Anyway, we made some cool stuff on those machines,
Oh yeah.
and we'll make some cool stuff on our new machines.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, newer and in our newer building. In fact, that's what we should talk about, because this really will be, more than likely, we'll be finishing our move next week, or out of this room. This will be our last podcast conversation, blah, 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 in this building. Do you have any emotional attachment to the building or to the things that we did here?
Not really. I mean, it's not
Just
that
all the trauma you'd like to leave behind like me?
It's not that I dislike this building. I do, but yeah, I don't really get attached to things like that too much in general. You know what I mean? So
To a space.
I mean, in my mind, I'm like, oh, it's a bigger place and it's less money and it's nice and it's newer. Sign me up. You know what I mean?
I'm just thinking less rats,
Mm-hmm.
a roof that doesn't leak, a place where
If you don't cut holes in the roof, it won't leak.
ex-employees didn't sleep in my office with other
With girls.
girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fresh start.
No more arguing. Yeah, fresh start.
Yeah.
I'm excited about closing the door on what's been pretty incredible ride and moving forward to something hopefully even better.
This feels like a clubhouse.
It
Yeah,
does.
the
I
other
think
one's
it's
like-
time to be a business.
Yeah, it's not your dad didn't build this clubhouse. You built it out of pallet wood and scraps of shit that you found in the trees in the woods behind your house, and it's a piece of shit.
And now it's time to
Yeah.
It's time to move into your first home,
Yeah.
your first real apartment.
your apartment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Who's
I'm
gonna
hoping it goes that way.
Hang the beer sign. We should
I was-
treat it. We should treat it like our first apartment. Put like a Heineken bottles everywhere,
Oh yeah.
or whatever the fuck it was.
You know,
Lots of cinder
I
block
see-
shelves.
I've never played Pong, but maybe it's time.
So, ping
Not
pong or
but-
pong?
No. Sorry. What do they call that? What is that? What's that ball game with the red cups?
Beer
The silver
pong.
Cups? Beer pong. I've never played beer pong.
I don't think I have
haven't. It's not
either.
that much fun.
It wasn't a fucking thing when I was.
We're not drinkers.
Yeah,
so
when
it's
I
not
was
really-
like 22.
But
Nobody
yeah,
fucking
well, even
played
then,
beer pong.
like it's shit. We just
Stupid.
drank.
I don't need an excuse to
But
drink.
I also
yeah.
didn't start drinking until I was 23, so I missed
Yeah.
a lot of the excess.
I took Grigsby over there, our resident frat boy, and he was like, "Yeah, you need like a little seating area over there, and we'll set the speakers up." And like he's fully envisioning the whole thing.
So now
right?
he's
He
like,
gets
"Oh,
it.
you need to keep those speakers." Then-
No, he
Yeah.
let me. He told me I should lower the price on it, but he goes, "If they
Hmm.
don't go for at least 50, let's set them up. Let's set them up." And I was like, "Dude, they don't need to fill this room. We have a PA system for that. You need a listening room." And so we came up with a whole vision of what could happen over there. And it's the vision we already had, but he really bought into it and sees as a reason to make it into the clubhouse, but a nicer clubhouse than what we've had in the past. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited about it. It is a little, for me as a quote unquote aesthete or designer for spaces, it's a little challenging to make an old office building into something sexy and cool, but I think it will be over time it will become really badass. Barry needs to make his ultimate man space in there, and if you're going to be here more than a month a year, you should have a space too that you actually like to hang out in.
Yeah, I'd love to have one. I don't like require one because I know that it's just like an empty room for half the year. But
It could just be
Whatever.
the place where Chase sets up his computer or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I was gonna say you just made your room
It's
is
your
just like
office.
where somebody can take a break and
go and
step
get all
off
my
to get
seats
the
out of
smell.
here.
Oh yeah, you get all your shit out, all your pictures and all your helmets. And...
I'm gonna start locking my office so that I know no one's had sex in my office.
There's ways.
Okay, sorry. That sounded like such a fake laugh, but that's not fake. Man, these questions are bullshit, bro.
They seemed okay when I was.
No, I'm just fucking. I like fucking Ricky. Man, this is a lot. This is a lot.
I
You need
just,
to go?
I do want to know, but like I did say around 7, and when I said
Let's cut it
7,
off.
when I said 7, I really what
Let's
I
do one
really
more.
meant was 7:30.
Let's do one more question.
Okay.
Like I knew I wasn't actually gonna hit the mark that I had promised. So
All right, here's one that since we're talking about revival. It was about getting to know you guys, but we'll talk a little more about revival. Ricky, I love your revival
your chat
celebrates its
GPT is so
long
good.
journey in the industry. No, he wrote this. I can tell he wrote this. There's a lot of misspellings in here. Just kidding. It's not a single misspelling. It's error free. The Handbelt Motorcycle Show. Your most memorable moments from the almost 10 years we've been doing it.
Mm.
Because literally 23 will
Oh,
be 10 years.
I know mine.
What's yours?
Mine is about 10 minutes into the very first hand-built show
Mm-hmm.
that we did,
And
and
the Handbelt Show, or when it was called the.
no
Okay.
hand-built show.
Okay.
And it
That was 2014.
probably 10 minutes, maybe it might have been half an hour. This is a few minutes in, to the point it was like accepting the things that were not
Perfect.
complete, like extension cords visible from underneath the merch bar, so a handful of like those details, because we were working literally right up, the doors open, and we're busting
Trying
our
to
ass.
finish.
Yeah, which is every year, but
Yeah.
now, but that was the first year, and it was the realization that we fucking did it, the realization that we pulled it off,
That it started.
and that it, not just that it started, but we fucking did it. Like it was good, and it looked amazing, it felt amazing, and people were
Really?
walking in totally fucking blown, like people's eyes were wide and they're like, holy shit. And just that realization that like like the grind, because there were six of us did that show
Total.
completely. Yeah, at that year
I'm glad you have a good memory.
it was
'cause I don't
6 of
remember
us entirely. We didn't have help, we didn't have crews, we
No
didn't have volunteers.
it.
We
Yeah.
didn't. There was still all the harrowing shit with the wall of death, and the and the challenges with them interacting with the city, and how that went down, and we almost didn't get approval, and like the permitting was all the way to the wire, and like we still like we pulled everything off, and it was like, it was interesting because like everything evolves and it becomes more complicated, but in that moment it was like a really pure DIY. We fucking pulled this out of our ass, and it was incredible. And I like, the reason why I remember it so well is because that's like a highlight moment, like that's like one of those like apex moments in my life where I
Really?
remembered that at that point in time, that was the biggest thing I had ever been involved in, and like that year, because Tim wasn't here yet, I don't think.
No.
Even
It was a
that
good year. I
like,
remember that year.
yeah, I did the like, so
There's a good photo of you at that. That's why I remember.
Oh,
you and
yeah?
Autumn, I think. Or
I don't
something.
remember that.
Or Autumn
But
took a photo of you.
but that was like the year that like basically all the shit was you and me like figuring that out. All of the permitting shit was me figuring that out, navigating Charlie.
I
and the
remember
wall of
presenting to the
death.
ceiling, or to the city,
Yeah.
or having to go sit in front of the city and to convince them that I had a fucking clue what I was doing.
Yeah.
So we get a permit.
Yeah. And like, so I think part of it was then I wore a lot more hats. It was a lot harder,
Yeah.
It was a lot harder.
You weren't the banner
because
guy?
of it, but I was the banner guy too.
I'm joking.
Oh, sorry.
You weren't only the banner guy.
Oh yeah, only the banner guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I helped out with picking a lot of the bikes and stuff. It was like the crew was so fucking small. It was like and in truth, the crew was super small, but everybody else was building bikes except you and me, and so we were doing that whole, like all of that
Because we
groundwork.
believed it was worth doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a moment like that for any of. In fact, I had to think really hard about just beyond Handbill's show. If there was a defining moment where I was like, yes. Maybe that's my problem. Is I don't have those. I mean, literally the whole time you're talking, I'm thinking, like, God, do I have anything like that? Just don't. There's so many things that have happened that were little moments, but there's not a moment where I'm like, pat myself on the back or whatever. We got through it. Maybe that year I went outside. I remember taking photos of the bikes lined up on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the year we closed the street down? No,
It
probably
might
not.
have been no.
That
I
might have
think
been
that would have
the year
been like
after.
maybe year 2.
And me thinking, yeah, because the street wasn't closed when I did this, and me thinking, oh my God, all these people showed up, and we
Yeah.
pulled. I think I must have done something like that, but not quite that.
Yeah.
I just need to step away for a second. Were you there that year? No, is that later?
No, I think I was with you guys. Obviously not the first,
The second or third,
the
right?
second one, I think.
Only the poster. That's how I always remember. But
yeah, I think that's when I started.
It's funny. I forgot there was only 6 people. When I think about the first year, I imagined 20 people being here.
Yeah.
Not it being a small crew of guys just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you and I forced everyone to do it that year.
Yeah.
It was like, no, we're going to, with willpower, we're not going to accept defeat from our first try at a show.
Yeah.
We're going to actually try to do something and make it
I think
impactful and good.
That's one of the things I remember. Like it was, I think this pivotal for me was that in that moment, I was like, I found like a medal that I didn't have or wasn't aware that I had, and that I could
You've pushed.
push through the exhaustion, through the point of like the past the point of like my feet hurt and I want to take a nap and I'm tired and I'm hungry and it sucks and I've been doing this for a week and I'm tired and I want to cry. To like keep on going until the very end of it, till suddenly the doors fucking open and people start pouring in and being like, holy shit, we did this.
I tell people, and even as I tell it, I think it ends up sounding like BS. Like, because I've told it before, and it almost ends up sounding like not real, but it's completely true. Is that the year that we didn't do the 2013 show? It was me solely going, okay, we're gonna make this happen, and then borrowing the venue, because that venue Richard let me borrow. He said, if you'll clear all the crap out, it was full of construction debris. There was offices still built into the front. He goes, if you'll get rid of all the construction debris and the piles of garbage, there was piles of garbage inside the building.
Yeah.
And the side yard wasn't even built yet. You couldn't use it. It was a construction zone. You can borrow the building. So we were the first real event to happen there.
Do you remember that they had a giant wall, like a scrim wall across the whole back of it that the city said like we couldn't have because it was a giant fire hazard.
You mean the west wall? Yeah, it was the west wall, right?
Yeah, it was a giant fire hazard. We had to tear that whole thing down.
And so they had to scrim this whole part of the building off we couldn't use. Anyway, and no one here, Jeff supported me emotionally, but physically no one was going to support me, and sure as hell not Stefan or any of these other people. Like, literally, the Handbell Show was started in only my name, as an entity completely in my name, because he made me separate it from Revival because it was such a liability and was useless and pointless thing to do. So I owned a Handbell Show outright, which meant the weekend before the Handbell Show, Richard, that owned the building, also had Scissor Lift in there, two of them, one of which worked, and then I'd swap back and forth. And I borrowed a bunch of extension cords from Jeff Davis and David Mashburn and was in the rafters zip tying and running them all so there'd be power at the post, because there was no, similar to what we have now, actually.
Yeah.
But and I had to do it all by myself, and no one wanted to come help me because it was stupid. And I think as I was putting the power in the rafters, that it probably wasn't going to happen. So we were not going to have a show. And the motorcycle show going on across the street that weekend, in that shed that was there by the railroad tracks.
The white
you knew
building.
that
Graphic
gal.
glass. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? That shed? There was a motorcycle show going on there that weekend. And those guys came into the building, saw what I was doing, and asked what I was doing, and said, ironically, I'm going to have a motorcycle show here. They were preparing for their show or whatever. Or maybe it was going on. That's what it was. That show was happening. I said, I'm going to have a motorcycle show here in a week or two. I think it was 2 weeks later. And they were like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, we'll see, blah, blah, blah. And they gave me tickets to their show. And I went and walked over into their show and was like,
what was their show?
I don't remember what it's called. I think it only happened 1 year.
Yeah,
I don't remember. It was.
I can't remember who it was.
Who knows? But it didn't happen again. So, because no one went. They were charging tickets, and no one went to tickets for a first year show.
First year,
heard of. So that was a complete flop, and they kind of laughed at me, and they kind of made fun of me.
Don't discount that I was there. Doing
Were
all
you
that
there
with you.
when we were putting the power up?
Yeah, I was cleaning all the trash on the ground with what's her name? Melissa.
Hey,
Richard's assistant. Remember Richard's assistant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe you.
She flew too high.
But I'm telling you, there was a day I was there completely by myself.
Yeah.
And that's the day I remember.
Yeah.
Was that I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, no one gives a fuck about this.
Yeah.
It's not even that grandiose that it ended up coming to
but
fruition.
You're just faking it. You're just making it like you. Fake
No,
it
but
till
I
you
mean,
make
like,
it.
even now, it's not like, oh, back in the day before it was a thing. But what I mean is, like, that's something when you realize that only you really kind of believed in something. Okay, us. When only you and I believed in something and everybody thought it was a bad fucking idea, to have it become something where a lot of people love it. A lot of people think that there's not. How could it ever have started from that?
I think the thing is how many
Alex
people
Ford.
have the vision to do something like that to begin with? I mean, the truth is, I fucking don't. Like, I wouldn't have done it on my own.
Yeah.
Because everything I think about is like on the micro
small,
level.
yeah.
You know, it's like, but you like the idea of creating an event. The other thing is like, how many people are so open and willing to make something that is so publicly available for scrutiny?
It's true.
Because, like, you know, yeah, like there's so much potential to fail and so much opportunity for judgment, and like you know, a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. And
Well,
then-
even the show that I said happened and failed.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was.
and
Good on them for trying.
you'd never done anything like that.
No.
You hadn't done anything like that. I hadn't done anything like that. I hadn't even participated it, like, so I didn't even see how it could like happen. Just I had free time. Like,
And for all intents and purposes, it was a flop that first year because of other circumstances and because it was first year. But the second year, we actually did it and called it the Handbill Show.
That should be like the
It
that should be a behind the scenes. I won't shit talk.
I'm not
today.
shit talking.
Well, I know. I'm saying I
Yeah.
would love to, but
Yeah, no, you don't even talk about
Okay.
the part of it that was shit. No.
no.
But I mean that it wasn't a lot of people that showed up. It was a small party group. Like maybe a couple hundred people
it
showed
was
up.
intimate.
Yeah, and then the second year was like, it was
Mhm.
like that moment you had. I think we were almost mobbed by
Yeah.
comparison.
Well,
A lot
that's
of
when we
people
had to
showed up.
move to Fairmont. I mean, to Statesman because.
Mm.
Well,
Oh, yeah,
because it was
eventually.
one
Yeah,
in,
we
one
reached
out,
one in,
and
one
like
out.
people weren't getting in, and we're just like, okay, shit,
Lying around the
you know,
block.
like-
That was even when we started charging tickets to
Lower
help
attendance.
reduce attendance.
I remember when we the first year we started selling tickets, like charging. God, so many people just like, oh, dude, like,
Mhm.
why you gotta charge? Like, there should be free entries for locals and all this shit. I'm like, dude, like,
Mhm.
There was like 5 people.
that's
but yes.
not how it fucking
Well-
works, man. I was like, if you want to keep coming to this,
Yeah.
we can't just fucking.
You think this
pay
is
for it.
free?
Yeah,
They started
exactly.
charging us for that venue. It wasn't free anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you remember, but that year, my job was to walk the line, which wrapped around the block, and I walked the line. And
apologized.
anybody, well, I talked to everybody. I greeted them. I apologized for them waiting in line. I appreciated their patience, because also what was happening is the city was counting us. We were having
Yeah.
to count, so it was one in, one out.
Capacity.
So I was apologizing to people, and anybody who bitched about having to pay, I was like, I'll give your money back right fucking now, and you can leave. Like,
And-
not
and did
rude,
you-
but just being like,
Did you have to
I
do that to
totally get
anybody?
it. Not one person. I had plenty of people
Complain.
bitch about it, but the moment I was like, hey man, it takes money to make this happen. If you don't want to pay for the experience that you're about to have, I am happy to give you your money back.
And you can go.
And everything. No, it's cool.
Yeah, we want
They
to.
just wanted to complain about it because they
People
just
like to
wanted to free.
complain.
Because people in Austin at that point in time, I don't know what the fuck people want now because I don't go out, but what everybody wanted then was a good time for free. Because everybody was used to what South by was like
Yeah.
back in the day, which
A
was
free
that-
show.
Yeah, is that you could, even if you didn't have a $4,000 platinum badge, you could
Go see something. You can
yeah,
go see
you could,
fucking-
yeah, you could spend the whole week at Emo's eating free barbecue and beer and watch a bunch of cool bands for free, and everybody wanted that experience.
That's how I met Jenna. South by show. Anyway, all right. Done.
Yeah, I think Jeff's got. Well, Jeff's my ride
Yeah,
too. So
Yeah. Hopefully this won't take long.
You could have borrowed my car.
what? Oh, you got to make a phone
I can make
call
a phone
first?
call first.
Ah, okay.
It's important. Yeah.
That's okay.
Well, then Alec and I will just keep talking about you
Cool. That's cool. There ain't nothing to talk about anyway.
now that he's gone.
My fragile ego.
Cool.
I wouldn't describe you that way.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. That was a joke.
Yeah. No, I know it was a joke. I
That was
got
a
it.
very
I got it.
joke.
I was just gonna
I
double
think it
down
was.
on it.
I think we were saying it was. So I mean, whatever. We can cut this out if need be. But
Cut to the chase.
but the first year, I'm considering that like not the first year because the first year was like a
Yeah.
tandem event that was kind of a nightmare. I wasn't a part of it then. I wasn't. But I think the following year when it was actually just like a revival hand-built show. I think that's the year that I started. I can't remember who it was that
The
year
photos
or
will
the year,
tell us.
or the year after. But
Yeah.
I mean, I've been here just as long as Tim has. So whenever Tim started,
That's crazy. I
yeah.
didn't really
yeah,
realize
I
that.
think we started like a week apart.
Poor Tim.
So that was 3 years. Tim started 3 years after I did. So this is my 14th year.
Jeff or Alec?
Yeah.
No, Alan and I because back in the day when we were younger, we would go to motorcycle not rallies, but meetups and events and
Hot rod and motorcycles.
yeah, and you would just see people, and then
There was a lot more of that. There was more of a scene.
yeah, there was more of a scene,
like
you know?
camaraderie because
Yeah.
it was small.
And then I would come to revival events, so then I knew him then, and then he was my neighbor, so that's kind of how it all like started, And then he was like, "You should come work why don't you come work at Revival?" And I was like, "Well, that sounds amazing." In my head, but I had another job that I really, really liked,
And he was also like, I'm not a motorcycle mechanic.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what he
And I'm
said.
like, I fuck with my own stuff, but I'm not like a professional motorcycle mechanic by any stretch. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know you know what I mean?
And I convinced him neither was I, so who gives a shit?
Yeah, and so I had been at the shop for like 9 years or 10 years, and I loved it. We were all really close. It was just 4 of us, but the owner of the shop, Richard, he was kind of like a father figure to the 3 of us that worked there, because he's older. He's like 75 now, I think. I just saw him the other day. And I didn't want to like let him down because I was leaving. Because before I worked at that shop, it's the oldest shop in Austin. It was opened in 1939 by his father, and then he took over in the 90s. And so it's a cool shop. There's a lot of cool shit in there.
I want to own that place.
There's so much cool shit in there.
Yeah.
And so before I started working with those guys, it was just 3 of them for like a decade, and I just so happened to live down the street, and I was working on this 66 Suburban that I had, and I needed something. So I needed them to pull, like, I don't remember what it was. I needed them to like do something with an axle that I had. And I went in there and I was like, "Are you guys hiring?" And he was like, he was like, "Yeah." Anyway, I got the job. I worked there forever, and I ended up really loving it. So I'm not nervous, but I was like, like, because Richard would always say like, "Oh, when people leave, I don't ever hire them back for many reasons," right? Because he's like, "Oh, because then this and this." So I was always like fearful of like, "Oh man, if I leave, then maybe I won't be able to come back." But I'd been there for so long already. And one day, I talked to Alan about this a few times, realized that he was serious, and I knew that it sounded amazing to me, So I went to my boss at the time, and I was like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something. I just want your advice." You know what I mean? Like, I've got this opportunity to like go work at this other shop that builds custom motorcycles, and I ride motorcycles and all this shit, so he knew it was like, and but I mean, I don't want to quit. I like it, but on the other hand, like, this is a new opportunity for me where I could learn a lot of stuff, and I could, start
air conditioning.
Yeah, air conditioning, free lunch. So I just want to know what you think. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to like make a mistake, And he was like, "Well, if I were your age, didn't have any kids, I wasn't married," he's like, "I'd fucking jump all over it, man." He's like, "I'd do it. Like, that sounds awesome." He's like, "And if it doesn't work out, you can always come back." And I was like, "Oh, I can?" He's like, "Yeah, of course. Like, you can always just come back here. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'd love to have you back, So then I was like, all right, I feel good about this,
Which made me feel good about hiring him. I remember him telling me this.
Yeah, and so...
Because I didn't want him to burn his bridges either,
Yeah, and so, because I was like, well, what if I start working there and then... Or they don't like me, or I don't like them, or like, I don't know, you know what I mean? And and so, I've been here ever since. That's kind of how it started. And I still go back to that shop. It's right down the street, and go visit, like, when I'm in town, have coffee, shoot shit and stuff.
I drive by there every day to take my kid to school.
Oh, really? On Manor?
And I think... every day.
Oh, that building's awesome.
I want to own it. I want to have our workshop in there. And I know that sounds ridiculous considering how small it is. It is
such a good corner. Yeah, and it's just like the definition of like old school
gas station.
It's not a gas station anymore, but it used to be as well. And it's a corner lot, old school building, flat, tall because of all the lifts. And every time you drive by, there's like some old cars out there and shit and all this cool stuff. And when you go in that place and you're working, like all the tools that he has, all the tooling, everything is just fucking old, man. Like, and it's all usable, he uses all of it because it's old tools and they work. But then there are like shelves up there that have like all these old like cans of oil and stuff that had never been used, like, but legit, it's not just decoration. They just haven't been touched in like 60 years. You know what I mean? And so it's just got a lot of cool shit in there. So when you go in there, I mean, it is like a shop and it's dirty and stuff, but like you walk in there, and especially if you like old stuff, you're like, this is like a fucking antique store, it's pretty cool. Yeah, but people ask him about buying that location all the time because he owns it, right?
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Go make your phone call,
Jeff Berry, and let me know what you think.
All right. Thanks for making us do this, Ricky.
I must pee.
I must urinate. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh God. Getting up, we're all like, ugh.
Well, I'm in that deep chair. I'm gonna get rid of that chair.